a lot of these endocrine disrupting chemicals, we call them EDCs for short, they are in our water bottles, in our lotions, in our shampoos, in so many different products and things we use day to day, that they mimic estrogen. The body then reads it as more estrogen. And so then we kind of get this body fat proliferation and stubborn fat, that kind of stuff. So that's the dominating symptom, if you would call that a symptom, maybe a sign.
On today's episode of the Modern Vital Podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about endocrine disruptors and specifically BPA. And today's special guest is functional nutritionist Kaileigh Lauren, also known as Coach Kailes, a renowned wellness professional and with a background in kinesiology and human nutrition from studying at OHSU. She's also a certified personal trainer. As a certified sports nutrition specialist, she's impacted thousands of clients with her inclusive approach to nutrition and fitness. And she's currently based in Monterey Bay, California, dedicated to making wellness accessible and enjoyable. And I love this. Her mission is to demystify the world of wellness, making it more enjoyable and less dogmatic for everyone. She also hosts Rebel Wellness Podcast. Welcome to the show, Kaileigh.
Thank you, Dr. Reebs. I'm so happy to be here.
It's great to have you. So endocrine disruptors, do you see this in your practice come up among your clients?
Yes, I would say I see it definitely the most. I dominantly coach females, and I would say that females show hormone imbalance, really visibly, you know what I mean? And so I would say I definitely have noticed once we dive into the lifestyle of my clients, especially the ones who seem like there's an imbalance going on, that there is tons of exposure to endocrine disruptors in many ways.
And what are some of the symptoms that you notice or, signs or symptoms, as you're working with them, taking their history?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a mixed bag because, it is and it isn't. I would say a dominating thing that I see is what's blanket termed estrogen dominance. There you go. So I'll normally see a lot of body fat patterning that is common with estrogen dominance, which if those who are listening don't know what that is, that usually looks like we have not enough progesterone in the female body in relation to estrogen. So there's more estrogen in comparison, right? You can fact check me on that one. So what I usually see is a lot of belly fat in the lower belly, a lot of thigh fat, a lot of glute fat, back of the arms fat. It's a normal body fat patterning for females, but we would see it a lot more in a way where it's stubborn, like it's not moving. And so that's usually my sure shot sign that there's too much estrogen in the body. And a lot of these, we call them EDCs for short, endocrine disrupting chemicals, they are in our water bottles, in our lotions, in our shampoos, in so many different products and things we use day to day, that they mimic estrogen and the body then reads it as more estrogen. And so then we kind of get this body fat proliferation and stubborn fat, that kind of stuff. So that's the dominating symptom, if you would call that a symptom, maybe a sign or something like that I tend to see. So that would be the main one, I would say.
That's so profound too, because it's how many people have that, and then how few practitioners actually think of endocrine disruptors and things like BPA and phthalates and PVCs and all these different chemicals that are in our environment actually throwing off the hormones and then causing the fat to be laid down and actually being maybe a root cause or a mediator of that deposition of fat. It's just, so what do you do to test or kind of work with that? How do you dig in there?
I am not somebody who can run these tests. So I refer to people like you and different functional medicine doctors specifically because as I've referred clients to try to do it through their general practitioners, most insurances ask too many questions and or they won't cover it. So that's where you guys come in. And so usually they'll go and get that done. We tend to get it confirmed. There's not really been a time where I haven't seen it come back balanced. I usually always see too much estrogen, maybe not enough testosterone, a lot of all the sex hormones, all over the place, but it's not only just the sex hormones. Endocrine disruptors, everything in the endocrine system gets disrupted, right? I'm sure you see that a lot on labs.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of evidence that it can throw off the thyroid too. And then it seems like indirectly we see a lot of adrenal fatigue as a result of the thyroid and the estrogen. And what's interesting too is not only can they, I guess, make too much estrogen or kind of turn on the estrogen production, but then they can also block estrogen production all the way and kind of lead to, I guess, estrogen deficiency as well. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can be a little tricky to tease it out. I mean, I am not a women's health expert, but I
Yeah.
see it a lot as well.
Yeah, I would say that that's also the unique angle. I have the most experience like with estrogen dominance, but I would say I've definitely had clients that are lacking estrogen and if more testosterone. I mean, we start to see it a lot with PCOS, which I do have a lot of PCOS clients, and I'm sure you've experienced quite a few PCOS patients, right? Yeah, and that's definitely an interesting one because it's elevated androgens and lowered estrogen and progesterone usually, which is super complicated because that's also becoming a blanket statement is, oh, you have PCOS. And it's like, but what does it mean? And it's like kind of a spectrum, Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and it's interesting too how BPA's, I mean, it's, I guess, processed through the liver through phase two, just like estrogen is, and mold and a lot of other things. And so it's like, how can we get that phase two detoxification going again, to support, I guess, the
Yeah.
BPA to move out as well as the estrogens and the other chemicals and things that we see. Like, what are some practical tips you give your clients to kind of get started?
Yeah. And then that also on that note, before I get into that, it is also in that kind of hot topic of this year of forever chemicals. I mean, those have been a topic for a long time, but now they're really like getting to the public because like the Biden administration finally kind of made a comment about it, and make some moves on it. And so I've gotten a lot of people asking questions about PFAs and such. And that was a really interesting thing to dive into. But those are chemicals that stay in your body forever, and it's very much part of the endocrine disrupting chemicals because they're hanging out, like you said, they just hang out in your body and you like, how do you get them out? Like, we don't know yet entirely. And so, but my best tips, like you were asking, would say the easiest thing you can do is start to do like a in-home environment exploration, I guess I'd call it, where you can either go to like ewg.org or I like telling people to use like the Yucca app. I have no affiliation. It's just an easy app. It's YUKA. And you can just go around your house and scan all your products, even your food, all that stuff. And they give you this really great list. Well, they'll give kind of a rating and tell you why. And they'll tell you each different chemical and what it's known to do, on record. So it's not kind of like this could do this. It's this does this because we've had enough cases, so it's not one of those things where you're like, maybe it's lying. So I think that that's a really great place for somebody to start because you'll become more aware of the products you're using. And it also gives you recommendations of swaps, like healthier swaps that you can
Cool.
do, which is important because, like, what do you do when you get rid of your deodorant and you're like, what can I use?
Right.
So yeah, can't live without your deodorant.
I'll have to check that out. The Yucca app sounds great.
Yeah, no, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. And there's a free version and then there's a paid version, of course, but I just only use the free.
Yeah, in my practice right now, I'm seeing a lot of really high BPA, and it's interesting too because like mold, shuts down the kidneys, and so does Lyme disease, and the kidneys are the main way that BPA moves out, and so it seems like people with mold illness end up with lots of chemicals building up in their system, and I'm seeing a lot of BPA that's like in the 99th percentile,
Wow.
and then all of these patients have lots of hormone imbalance, kind of across the spectrum.
Yeah, and it's fascinating too because unfortunately we don't even realize that like our aluminum cans, like we can buy a healthy soda or whatever, but the aluminum can is lined interiorly with plastic. And it typically has BPA, unless it specifically says BPA free, which I've looked at a lot of cans and they don't say that all the time. So it's like there's just one of those little smoke and mirror things that's like it's hidden in your can. You think it's aluminum, but it's not. And a lot of people consume a lot of products in different ways. So they're either consuming it, I don't know if you would call it consuming it on your body, but you're absorbing it, with a lot of they like fragrances, all that kind of stuff, whatever it was in, if it was heated and it leached out of the plastic, because everything's in plastic, and so bottles that are for cosmetics don't always have to be BPA free either. And so I'm sure that's where you're getting a lot of exposure in your patients is we are all thinking of BPA free Ziploc bags and stuff, but in reality, it's everything plastic. BPA is in everything plastic almost.
Yeah, it's crazy too how it's lipophilic and comes from plastic, which is lipophilic and loves fat, and then it literally goes into the body and then causes more fat to get laid down, and then it probably can get stored in that fat as well. We really don't know much about that, but obviously these chemicals stay in our fat, and then when people lose weight, they dump all of these toxins into their body, and a lot of times they get kind of sick for a while from it.
Oh, that's
I'm sure
interesting.
you
Yeah.
probably know quite a bit about that, being a personal trainer and working with the body for so many years.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't say I've gotten to see it from that scope. So that's a really interesting viewpoint from your experience. But I have definitely seen people go through physical changes that also alter their health. I would say I've seen people who lose like a mass amount of fat and then they'll like lose hair. And I've seen like a lot of misinformation online where people will be like, oh, when you lose weight, you lose your hair. And I'm like, not always. That's kind of a sign of a deficiency or something's wrong. Yeah. Have you noticed any of that before with patients?
The hair loss or which
Or
particular
just
spot?
like deficiencies coming with whatever version of weight loss they tend to go.
Yeah, definitely. And always trying to figure out what's causing the deficiency. Was it there before, or is it being driven by something new? And then it's crazy how deficiency kind of leads to more toxicity, and toxicity can lead to more deficiency. And so it's like kind of sometimes two sides
Yeah.
of the same coin. I'm curious, when you have people make these changes, download the app, replace their personal care products, like how long does it take for you to start seeing some changes where they're like, oh, hey, like I've lost a couple of pounds, or I'm just feeling better, you see some changes in their history that indicate it's working.
I would say the fastest part, because a lot of this is super unsexy. Like I say, like my approach to health and your approach to health is like unsexy, but at the same time, it's the long game. We're all playing the long game, right? So the short-term things that do happen immediately is if there's somebody who gets reactions on their, like that's manifesting on their skin. So like eczema, versions of psoriasis, things like that, like where it's kind of that gut skin connection. I will usually see if they're getting affected by like EDCs in like fragrances, like in candles or lotions or perfume, all that kind of stuff. Detergents, laundry detergents. I'll see that immediately improve. Like they'll start to see like less rashes, maybe less itchy, dry skin, all that kind of stuff. That's something that somebody can look forward to for like immediate. For long term, though, I would say the clients that have cleaned up their household products and their own products, it's like a 2-year thing. And it's the ones who are willing to invest in their health because healthcare is sick care. So like you have to invest out of pocket for the better quality tests, as you know, usually not a lot of insurances will cover like Dutch tests or GI maps, all that kind of stuff. And so the ones that we get to actually track their progress, like through a Dutch test, like I have one in mind, she has cleaned up a lot of her toxin load in her house and done a really good job prioritizing that. And we've gotten a test every year and we've seen her hormones and everything improve, but it's a slow game. It's definitely like you're investing in yourself and you're taking care of yourself and you're being patient. But I would say a lot of those kind of external symptoms are immediate when you start to take out of those environmental endocrine disruptors. But the internal stuff is a little bit of a process.
Yeah, I see a lot of patients who make a bunch of progress and then they kind of hit a wall or they stop, and then usually they're not able to lose that extra weight, in men and women. And then I say you really need to do the environmental toxicology screening because there's probably some environmental toxicants and factors that are playing a role in this. And then they really think about it for a while. And sometimes they can't come up with the money to do it. And at that point, I
Yeah.
usually can't really help them much more. I mean, I can give them basics, but so it's kind of like, all right, well, and they'll be doing Orange Theory Fitness every day, and they'll be in the sauna, 3 times a week, and they'll be eating the healthiest, modified paleo, whatever ketogenic diet, and they're just
Yeah.
not getting the results they want.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes
Yeah.
environmental toxicants that are just in their system.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a really good point. I would say that I've definitely seen a lot of clients who kind of refuse to change certain things in their life that are outside of it. Like they love their little cheapy Target candles. They love their, all this kind of stuff. They're lighting it every day, or the Bed Bath and Beyond or whatever it is sale. Oh no, it's Bath and Body Works. So everyone loves that candle sale, but those are like massive endocrine disruptors. I used to do it too. Like it was definitely me. Yeah. It's really hard to cut that out because it's little comfort things, but I think getting to the mindset shift, like when clients hit a wall like that, that's definitely where I usually have to either see how much deeper can we get into the mindset shifts, like how much does your health and maybe trying to move this weight make you okay with being like, we're going to either change the quality of your candles, just using that example, or cut them out altogether, at least for 6 months, like set like a date like a time stamped type of thing. And then like usually it's a little bit better than just being like, you have to get rid of this forever. And then they're like, no. And they're like, I'm going to go run and see if I can run it off, and that never works. So I would say that is definitely a really tough part. It definitely comes into changing habits, and like humans are just habitual, and comfort brings dopamine and such. And people don't really want to cut all of it out when they've already changed so many other things. And it's really tough. It's really tough.
Well, this has been really great. Where can people find you online?
Yes, I am at coachkailes.com, and you can also sign up for my newsletter if you wanted to be a part of the health crew. And you can also find me on Instagram at Kaileigh Lauren, or at our podcast, Rebel Wellness Podcast. Those are great places.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Kaileigh.
Thank you for having me.
That concludes today's episode of the Modern Vital Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. We value your feedback. If you have any questions or suggestions, please reach out to me at ben@modernvital.com. Also, please leave us a review if you enjoyed this episode. And we look forward to having you join us next week for another exciting episode of the Modern Vital Podcast. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Modern Vital Podcast. Your support fuels our mission to empower you on your quest for optimal health. Remember, our Modern Vital store offers supplements to guide you on your path to wellness. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share our podcast. Until next time, stay proactive on your health and wellness journey.